So I'm gonna start with 3 strands of the sage green thread, and I am just cutting off the very end of it so that everything is even, and that'll help me put it in the needle better. And another difference here is when we do embroidery projects that are going to be staying in the hoop, I usually do a big looped knot. With these, where the back of it is going to be touched, we don't want to risk having anything pulled. So I am just tying a double square knot. So there's the first. And the second. Now that's nice and tight, and I'm going to clip it fairly close to the edge of that knot. That way we don't have a lot of overhang or anything like that. So we are going to start on the flowers. I'm making sure that I don't have any of my layers on the back of my project or the back of my fabric coming through. I'm going to start right here at the bottom of this stem, and we're going to do a stem stitch. Now I'm taking a break on my stem stitch so that I can go ahead and stitch this little leaf. So I pulled that down just like I was doing up above, and I'm going to come and make a little petal stitch down here. Like I said before, this is mostly for the stick and stitch techniques, but I do have lots of other videos that show techniques on stitches individually. So really fast, this is the petal stitch. I brought my thread up and down so I have this little loop hanging out here. And then I bring my needle up at the end of whatever the shape is, if it's a leaf or if it's a petal. And then when you pull that down, this outside tack keeps that little cute round shape where it's supposed to be. So now I can pick up where I left off on the stem and keep going up the flower. So now at the end of this little piece where I have the little buds, I am gonna leave it and wait and come back, and I'm gonna use the purple to fill in that so it looks like the flower buds. So I'll come back down to this stem and keep stitching like it wasn't interrupted. Something you'll notice with this stick and stitch is that because it is a sticker, your needle might start to feel kind of gummy. And if that starts happening, all you have to do is take like a wet washcloth and wipe down the needle. And I usually do that about every time I change the thread. And that way it keeps it clean and it makes it easier to stitch. Now we have our green all stitched in. I'm going to show you how we flip it over and tie off a knot. So it's a little bit trickier when you have extra fabric hanging out on the edges like this. But once you get down to your knot, all you're going to do is take it, and we can take off the needle now. So take your thread and loop it under and tie it. So I have my loop, and just like I'm tying a square knot, I am taking the base of that knot where the threads cross, and I'm holding it against the fabric. That way when I tie the knot, it is tight against the fabric, and that makes it less likely to come loose. So I'll trim all my threads. and we'll start on the next color. Next, I have my 3 strands of purple floss, and I'm gonna make these flowers. So even though I love the look of using more strands of floss, on these stick and stitch, especially on this fabric, it's really hard to pull the thread through on the thicker stuff. So I'm gonna stick with 3 strands and make it a little easier on myself. So this first stitch is gonna be a French knot over where this bud is. And like I said before, we want these stitches to be secure more than anything. So I have my little French knot. I just gave it 2 little wraps, and I'm gonna pull it through. This is something I've shown in all of my videos with the French knots, is after I make the knot, I want it to be a little bit more stable. So I bring my thread up right next to it, and I take my needle and stitch it down again. And that gives the knot just a little bit more security, especially with something that's gonna be touched a lot. We want to make sure we have that. So next I'm gonna jump to the flower. And this flower is very simple. We're gonna just do petal stitches around each petal. And that's the same stitch that I showed on the leaves. Then in the middle, I'm just gonna add a couple French knots to make the flower feel more complete. Okay, next I have 3 strands of navy blue floss, and a couple things to remember. So I don't want this to show through on the white any more than it has to. So I'm gonna start my thread where there's gonna be, there's gonna be a knot hanging off the back. I'm gonna start it where there's other threads around, and that way if there is a little bit that shows through, it's not as noticeable. And I'm just gonna fill or trace this moon shape with a back stitch. There are lots of stitches that you can use that are really fun for doing the just a simple straight line type stitch like this. I would recommend doing ones like back stitch and stem stitch over a chain stitch, because I got caught on the zipper back here. That's something you have to watch for when you're stitching on other kinds of things. I recommend doing this kind of stitch instead of a chain stitch because this moon has these nice points that we want to be really clear, and it's harder to get that with a chain stitch. And then B, we want to make sure that this is secure, and a back stitch is a very secure stitch. All right, so now I have my little moon stitched in. I have my flowers, everything's done. I'm gonna tie this off, and then I'm gonna show you the funnest part of a stick and stitch. Now this is my favorite part of stick and stitch patterns, is we have here a bowl of warm water, and all you have to do is take this pattern and place it in. And you need to let it soak for just a few minutes, not super long, just enough for this sticker to start to dissolve. So you know it's done when you see all these little floaties in the water. That's the stickers being dissolved. And we can see there's nothing left of the sticker. We just have our stitching. So you can leave this out to dry and see your result when it's done. Once it's dry, it's kind of like a big reveal. To get to see how the stitches look and everything when it's all complete is so fun. I love seeing the stick and stitch designs and what you guys decide to put them on. So leave comments and like this video. I want to hear what you suggest for where you put your stick and stitch patterns.